honestly, I try to give out the secrets. You know what I mean? Like there's no, like I don't hold anything back. Like frankly, like if you wanted to, you probably could dig through all of our YouTube content, all of our shorts we post, stuff like that, and you could get all the information you're going to need on how to train your dog.
This past Sunday, I had a friend over, and this is also only with men, only in the house.
Yeah.
Koa was cuddling with him and licking him and just totally comfortable. And then he stood up, got off the couch, and ran at him, growled, snarled, bit at his legs. At that point, I didn't have this in my hand. But I don't know where it's coming from all of a sudden. Like, it's only with men, it's only been in the house. He's not guarding food or toys or anything. Hasn't been like loud noises going on. I don't know, it's seemingly out of nowhere, but it's worrying me that I'm like, I gotta get ahead of this because I don't want this to become a thing.
Well, let's break down situations, right? So let's talk about the two situations you had with the workers, right? What do you think was going on there? And how often are they there?
Probably like once a week.
Once a week?
Yeah.
Okay. And you said, and they've been once a week for like 2 months or so?
Yeah.
Something like that?
It's happened twice.
And like a full day, once a week for 2 months.
Yeah.
So 8 times in total, right? And 2 of those times is when he had the issue, right? What are you generally doing with him when they're there?
Both times that happened, we were just sitting at the kitchen table. They were on a different side of the house, but they had walked through the kitchen, and that's both times.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. And all the other times they didn't walk through the kitchen? Or not really?
Not so, I mean, maybe a little. I never paid attention to it much because they're there all day and kind of moving around the house.
Sure.
We'll be in and out of the house while they're there. There's not, at first I thought maybe there was like loud noises going on, but they weren't.
No, no, I don't think it was that.
But I don't know if it's like, is it a protective thing? Is that...
Yeah, a little bit. Listen, if we're going to break down those first 2 situations, you have random people in your house, right? And one, they're not there very often, right? They're there once per week, which in the grand scheme of things is nothing, right? The majority of the time they're working, they're out of sight. And in his mind, he's like, what the hell are these people? Why are there these people in my house right now? Why do I not see them? Why is mom not interacting with them like she would her regular guests and stuff like it's a weird, if you really look at like workers at the house, it's a very weird thing for dogs, right? And then you're probably not thinking a whole lot of it. You're like, yeah, there's workers here. We're hanging out, doing our thing. They're doing their thing. Don't worry about it kind of thing, right? But in his mind, he's concerned about it the whole time. He's not acting on it, but he's concerned about it. And then suddenly I've been concerned about it for the last 6 hours. Now suddenly this person's walking right through this area. I gotta go proactively stop the threat, right? So that's what's going on in his mind. And this is why with workers, I set hard and fast rules. Put the dog away or put the dog in command, right? Especially if it's only once a week, right? There's no reason why, one, the workers need to be worrying about what he's doing, and we need to have him in a position where he's worried about what other people are doing without us giving him direction, right? Okay. So that's kind of the easy solution to that is like when you have workers over the house, either he's in a bed stay, right? That way, if he starts getting concerned, before he escalates to the point where he's going to want to bite, he's going to break the bed stay. You can correct him for that. Problem solved, right? And it's just good training opportunity in general, right? Or, like I said, stick him in his crate. Just have him in there, right? So a little bit of proactive management with that. Don't leave him just to his own devices to like just, figure it out essentially, right? Now with guests coming over, that's the more concerning, but still not concerning because it's kind of a pretty easy solution for that one as well, right? So the guests at the house kind of thing, you kind of said it right off the rip where you said, this person was over the house, he's cuddling with him, I'm assuming he's kind of up on the couch hanging out with him, doing all that kind of stuff, getting all cozy, whatever, right? And then the guy gets up, right, and then goes to leave, and it startled him, right? And we have this ping pong sometimes that'll happen in dogs' heads where we let them just kind of, when they're excited about somebody, get excited about somebody, right? Go and climb all over them and get all excited and give them kisses and cuddle with them. And frankly, if we look at it like from a human standpoint, it's like, oh, it's cute. But if you were to really look at it, like he's like just totally out of control in that moment, right? Why are you going so crazy over this person? You know what I mean? But what happens is if we allow them to do that too much, especially if it's people they're not around like really, really frequently, right? Was this a new person or somebody who's been around a lot?
Not a ton, but not a brand new person.
Okay, so somewhere in the middle, we'll say, right? But what happens is if he's in that state of mind, like basically impulsively out of control, getting excited over somebody, if he gets nervous, he's gonna slingshot the other way to impulsively out of control scared.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we need to find the harmony in the middle, and we need to say, when you're excited, there's still rules and boundaries, and when you're scared, there's still rules and boundaries, so they sit somewhere in the middle with it. You can get excited, you can go get pet and stuff like that, but you're absolutely not allowed to climb all over everybody, right? You're absolutely not allowed to be jumping over them, right? If this is like a persistent issue, like you have another sort of like incident or something like that, when people are over, you really probably shouldn't be on the furniture, right? Because he's kind of proved that that's something he can't handle right now, right? And what'll happen is by setting that boundary there and him being like, oh, I'm so excited, and then you're like, no, you're not allowed to do that. He's like, whoa, okay, mom's still in charge right now. When that thing happens that startles him, he's not going to slingshot the other way.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So in a scenario like that, I didn't have this in my hand.
You don't need it in your hand. Was the collar on him?
I think so.
Okay. Go ahead, you can finish. Yeah.
Or I guess in any scenario, not even just the couch situation, if I don't have this with me and I would normally be giving a correction, what's the time span between a behavior and when a correction can be given where there's like...
Good question, right?
Like,
so,
is 2 minutes too long?
well, let's look at it a little differently, right? So the behavior, we need to correct the behavior when the behavior happens, right?
Okay.
Now, what's our no marker for?
In that scenario?
In general, what do we use the no marker for?
This feels like a trick question.
I'm testing you a little bit with this, obviously, because like really understanding some of this stuff is going to help you not run into a situation like 6 months down the road, right?
Yeah.
So our no marker, right, is a marker, right? So what does a marker do? It identifies something.
Yeah.
It identifies a moment in time, right? So that's the whole reason why we use a no marker instead of just tap the button, is to identify a mistake and give us the time to give a correction, right? So it's not necessarily that the correction itself needs to happen the second that the behavior happens. It's that we have to identify the behavior the second the behavior happens. From there, we've bought ourselves the time to give the correction, right? So in all those situations you described, let's say the remote is in the kitchen and you're in the living room, right? And whatever, that situation happens. As long as I identify it immediately, no, right? My no marker takes a snapshot of what he's doing in that moment, buys me the time to go get that remote wherever the heck it is, make sure it's real high. And honestly, in those types of situations, I'm going all the way up, right? Like I'm making it not fun to bite people, right?
Yeah.
And then I can give my correction for it. And then he's going to associate that correction with whatever he was doing when he heard no, right? So don't get super hung up on needing to have it in your hand at all times, because it doesn't need to be. It needs to be,
More so just giving the...
it needs to just happen after the no marker at some point,
Okay.
right?
Okay. I notice his behavior definitely shift with men versus women.
Sure. That's yeah,
Is that just...
that's normal, I would say, but in general, if you look at the bigger problem is he's deciding who's okay and who's not okay, right? So we're taking that decision making away from him. When workers are here, big burly working men, right? We're telling him, do that bed stay right now, do not worry about them, right? So we're proactively going into the situation telling him, focus on this, don't worry about this, as opposed to leaving it kind of up to him of like, figure it out. If you want to investigate them a little bit, that's okay, as long as you don't buy, you know what I mean? There's too much Koa decide, right? We need to take that decision making away. Same with when people come over, right? I don't know what your routine is when you have guests come over the house, but that's why we do the bed stay initially when guests come over the house for like 15 minutes, is because I'm telling them, I don't care if this is somebody you love or somebody that you hate. I'm telling you focus on this thing right now. So getting back to making the scary things a little less scary and the exciting things a little less exciting. If he's super amped up because it's somebody he absolutely loves, he's got to practice impulse control in that situation still when they come over. Yeah. And if it's somebody he's really scared of, he's got to practice impulse control in that situation. So we decide and we even it all out.
Okay.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that was my next question about, like, you said 15 minutes.
15 minutes. I think a lot of people don't do enough time. They do 2 minutes, you know,
no,
60 seconds maybe.
I've definitely
right?
let that slip.
Yeah, a lot of times we'll see this sometimes. I'll go to people's houses, right, and they have their dog in a bed state, and I'll walk in the door, and as soon as I take my shoes off, they're like, okay, right? And it's like the dog's just sitting there like, oh, right? You're like, it's like a slingshot. Right? You're just teaching him to just launch. So 15 minutes gives you the time where he gets in, he's all amped up, and we say, don't worry about it. Chill there for a little bit, right? People get their shoes off, get their coat off, relax for a minute, right? And then we let his energy kind of come down a little bit and practice that impulse control and be successful with that impulse control. Then we release him to be a part of things.
Do you feel like him getting so excited like that on the couch and everything, I should kind of not have him on the furniture? I would mix it. Yeah, if this were my dog, I would, when people are coming over at least, I would totally kick him off the furniture. And that would mean I would correct him if he tried to jump up on. Yeah. Is that going to take him a second because it's like his second home?
Yeah, maybe. You know, they pick it up faster than you think. You know, like I said, if people aren't there, I'm okay with him coming up on it. But when people are there, it's just too vulnerable of a position. And it's generally probably, you know, I'm just trying to picture what you were kind of describing to me. And what I'm envisioning, because he's not a very big dog, is he's like jumping on the couch. He's like up on the person. Is that kind of what's going on? Yeah, right? So I'm just envisioning just Koa just going bananas, right? And that's really the problem. A lot of times we look at the bad thing, but that is kind of the issue. Is why does he feel like he could just, because that's a very controlling thing for a dog to do, is climb all over somebody and do that. And like I said, especially with a smaller dog, we look at it as cute. It's like, oh my God, Koa, this is so fun. But like, it's very controlling, right? And if you look at it, it might not be so like happy-go-lucky. You know, we look at it as this like happy-go-lucky thing, but if you really look at it as like what it is, which is a controlling behavior, it might also be coming from, I'm a little insecure of this person, so let me kind of like control and dominate them a little bit. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which would also result in why he was so quick to act aggressively when he got up. Right.
Well, that's what threw me off, because it was like, 2 seconds. Was licking his face to sound.
Well, because let's say it was this, right? Let's say he was uncomfortable with this guy, right? He ran over him, is climbing all over him to try to control him, because that's what you do when you're uncomfortable with something. I need to control this. And then the guy was like, oh, I got to get up and go somewhere else. And he's like, no, I'm controlling you, right? Like, I got to run over and try to control it even more intensely. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if you look at it that way, it actually makes a lot of sense, the behavior. So, and that would also make sense why nipping that in the butt the second he's jumping over that guy, right? Boom, big corrections for that, right? Not allowed to do that. Get him like really taking you seriously in that moment will prevent it from ever escalating to that. That's a lot of this kind of stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier like when you really break it down like that. You can kind of understand what's going on in the dog's head a little bit more.
Yeah. I think too, because like I was saying, it felt like it was coming out of her. Like it was like he's never has never had any kind of behavior like that towards anyone that's been in my house for any reason.
A lot of times it flips quickly, right? Where like, we know Koa's always been a little bit of an insecure guy. Like that's not news to anybody, obviously, right? And he had his history of like reactivity and all that kind of stuff. So again, not news that he would try to act out in a type of controlling way when he gets insecure. I think a lot of times what happens is, especially like the new thing is that you have workers in the house and you've had them in the house for the last month. And it's not like they're there every single day. It's once a week for a month, which in the grand scheme, if you look at it, only 4 to 8 times, whatever. That's not that many times. And what'll happen is it builds up, right? The first time I'm uncomfortable with this, second time I'm uncomfortable with this, third time I'm really uncomfortable with this, fourth time I'm uncomfortable and this guy's coming into my space, I gotta act on it, I gotta control it.
See, and in my mind, I would think third time he's more comfortable, fourth time he recognizes them. And so we're thinking
so it's just, it's just our job to, like I said, be proactive in those situations. Like if we have like our landscapers or house cleaner over or something like that, the dogs are just away. It's just like, I could put them in bed stays and they'll be fine. And if they're there for 8 hours and you're like getting work done and want to put them in a bed stay or something for it, I'm okay with that. But there's no reason why you need to subject yourself or them to that. You know, just set yourself and him up for success in that moment. And in the situations where it really matters, like with guests and stuff, that's when, you know, you can handle it. And let's say he was really uncomfortable, which obviously he was, which is why he acted in that fashion. Honestly, you like sticking him in his crate or something, he probably would like that more anyways.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I didn't know really like the distinction between, do I just put him away so he's not like, or I don't know, like I want him to be.
Sure. No, I understand. It's like we want him to tolerate
it, or like be able to like handle things like that. Not
yes.
that that's happening all the time,
yeah.
but like just knowing what's the line between. It's not necessary that you're.
Yeah.
In that.
Well,
in this area right now.
I totally understand what you're saying, and the way I look at it. Yeah. The way I look at it is. Obviously, I don't want to put him away because I can't keep him under control in that situation, which is why I would maybe say, you know, the next time I come over, bed stay the whole time. I'm going to make sure I can keep him under control around them, right? But once I've checked that box, you get to a place where it's like, less is more, right? And the less we're working on exposure stuff or socialization stuff, the more I could ensure success when I go to actually do it. You know what I mean? As opposed to some people just love putting their dog in every single situation, like ever, right? And though I might be able to keep them successful in 90% of those situations, the more that I do, the more I'm going to run into a probability that I miss something, you know, and then set them up for failure and something bad happens. Right? It's like socialization with other dogs. The people that call me that say, oh, my dog got in a dog fight or something like that are the ones that socialize their dog like every single freaking day with new dogs. It's not the ones that like once a month they set up a play date with their dogs, you know? Right. So that's the way I kind of look at that is we want to, you know, existence training is good and, you know, making sure he can keep himself under control if a worker is over the house is important. But once I've checked the box that I know I can do it, I don't need to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when we're on walks, two things. When we're in a down on walks and we go to get up, we have a hard time because we immediately both want to like run. Like,
sure.
Even though I say come to release them, they're like gearing to run.
Got
so I have to correct right away. And then she seems to like pull more on walks, so he'll walk next to me, but it's like I'm constantly like having the leash like holding tight because I feel like I'm sore after the walk.
Well, here's the thing, right? So the reason why I said don't focus on pulling is because we should be holding our leashes so loose that if they're pulling, they're so far gone then at that point that we missed 3 opportunities to correct already. Do you know what I'm saying? Where what sometimes will happen is we'll hold the leashes short and they'll be pulling, but they'll still kind of be in position. You know what I mean? So you got to make sure you give them that freedom to make the complete mistake so you can correct for the complete mistake.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna do some walking next. So I'm gonna give you this back. Okay. You can go ahead and set it however you wanna set it. And we're gonna go for a little walk here and I wanna see how you go about enforcing it.
Okay.
So what do you think about all this?
Me?
Yeah.
About what? Like
what
walking right now?
Yeah.
She's a little further than I should be, but I'm trying not to focus on the pole.
Yeah. She's this is kind of what I mean though, right?
Yeah.
So if you were holding that that leash looser, where would she be?
Way up there.
Way up there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I mean. That's why I say don't worry about the pull because she's been out of position before she started pulling.
Okay. So then I can correct and say
yeah.
no.
Oh yeah.
No, Ellie.
Perfect. No, he's doing all right. You know, they're both a little further ahead than I'd like them to be. And this is kind of the dangerous place that a lot of people fall into where this is so much more manageable than what it used to be.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That's what I keep telling myself.
It's better, but it's not as good as it needs to be, right? So what happens is when you hit that point where it's better and we start accepting like sloppy because it's better, it deteriorates really quickly because it's not clear to them. Once we get into the little park up here, we'll work a couple of drills that'll help you be able to visualize this much easier.
Okay.
And these are all normal things first week back, and especially given you're doing it with 2 dogs, like that adds another degree of difficultness to this, where a lot of people are learning how to do this with 1 dog initially, you know? That looks good. Tucker is actually doing very well.
Yes.
His positioning looks really good. He seems like he's listening to you pretty well. She's definitely the pushy one with this.
Yeah. Oh God, this makes me so nervous.
I'll hold these.
Okay.
Okay, so here's what I want you to do. You're gonna walk around this area here in the come command.
Okay.
and you're going to enforce it exactly the same as how you were doing it on leash. Now, the reason why I like practicing this off leash is by getting this out of your hand sometimes, you're going to see the mistakes more.
Okay.
Because you're not going to be able to depend on a little bit of tension, you get what I'm saying? So give it a go. Say come, just start walking around.
Come.
And that looks like perfect right there. So now go ahead and start adding in some stops. You don't have to worry about it down, just make sure they stop with you. Perfect. And then you'll go ahead and say come and then start walking again. And what I'm looking for is just like right there, how when you said come and walk, they didn't dart ahead, right? They stayed with you. Perfect. Yeah, sometimes we get so hung up on this, you know, it throws everything off. It stops us from being able to visualize this.
Do I say?
No, I don't care if they lay down. I just want to see them stop with you. That's it. And you could obviously start off, just practice this in the yard, you know, where it's, you know, contained, obviously. Then if you want, you can go to the park and practice it and just have the leashes drag or something.
Okay.
Just make sure anytime you're doing it like this, I'm always much higher on the level, just in case. Beautiful. And that right now looks about as good as it gets. That looks really, really good.
So at the end of the walk, this is how they'll walk. Like
Good.
Which I'm sure it's
So you just got to start holding them to this standard at the beginning of the walk.
Okay.
We don't want to be dependent on them just like tired. We want them to understand right at the beginning of the walk, if you're not focused like this, there's big corrections for that.
Okay. Which makes sense because I'm not reaching over her.
Yeah.
Like normally,
Exactly.
I'm in.
So now the only thing you need to do is once these leashes go back on, you need to tune out the fact that you have leashes on.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Pretend there's no leashes on, and as long as you do that, you'll be able to get this.
Okay.
Because if they're doing it right now off leash, why wouldn't they do it with the leash on? The only reason would be if we start doing something different. Well, what's happening?
I guess I kind of give you the.
Yeah, you fill me in.
I'll let her do it from.
Oh, from my point of view?
Yeah. Give me the rundown.
So they get along, but she just is really playful, and now he's kind of scared of her
Okay.
because she's playing with him, but it can
Yeah, I got you.
get a little too much
Uh-huh.
for him.
Sure.
So he runs and hides.
Sure. And so how long have they been together in the house for now?
Saturday?
So not super long.
No.
Just under a week.
Yeah.
All right. And the couple incidences you said you had where she kind of snapped at him, what happened? Like what were they? What was going on when they happened?
The most memorable one, or like, she got her dog food. I was putting her dog food in like her bin.
Yeah.
And they were both sniffing it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it contributed, but she gave her something with him and something with her.
Yeah.
But she didn't do anything until after it put the dog food away.
Yeah.
But she like lunged at him.
Okay.
Oh yeah, like she cut her paw like in the morning when we were playing catch, and I was checking her paw and he came up to sniff her.
Yep.
And she didn't like that.
Okay. And was that it, or did you have another one also?
Those are the two that I remember.
One was when you were in, I was cooking.
Oh yeah, like they were both in the kitchen. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were all those in the first couple days?
I think the dog food one was yesterday.
Yeah, the first couple of days they were good.
Which is normal, believe it or not. Like a lot of times initially it's just like the excitement of, oh my God, there's another dog here. This is cool, right? And then it's like you get past those first couple days and you start getting into the realm of like, they get a little tired of each other. And then it's like, you know, why are you messing with, you're really making a scene over there, girl. You know, like, why are you here with all of these? Why aren't you going away? You're a part of all my routines now, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So really the key here is just going to be a matter of just,
No. Sorry. Stop.
it's just going to be a matter of just giving good direction through a lot of these places. And you got to kind of be a couple of steps ahead of the dogs, right? Meaning, you know, resources, right? Food, toys, affection, right? We need to predict that those are going to be issues so that we can make sure they don't turn into big problems, right? And we'll kind of get into some of that. What I want to do here first is, let me see your remote from you. Thank you. Why don't you go ahead and just release her off the bed, and we're going to start with that here. See what we get.
Okay.
And just, you know, just ignore both dogs, obviously, at this point. I just kind of want to watch them, see if I see anything.
Oh yeah.
Now, when you say that he seems scared of her, what do you see? Because right now, I'm not seeing him look scared at all of her.
Like if she's like laying by the door in there and I'm in the bedroom, like he'll stand out here and he won't go in until she moves. No.
No. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Now, stuff like that, I would not necessarily say scared in that situation. I would say just being respectful of space, right? Like a situation like that, like he's a little guy, right? She's totally blocking the space, obviously. He's not going to go just push her out of the way, obviously. He weighs a tenth, you know, what she does, if that, right?
Yeah.
So he's going to wait until she moves in that type of a situation, right? When I look at a dog that's scared of another dog, I look at like actively trying to avoid the dog at all costs, which is not at all what I'm seeing right now, right? So again, you know, be mindful of that, obviously. And as he gets a little bit more comfortable with her and they develop a little bit more of a relationship, you'll start noticing, like, you know, and keep in mind also, like, he's getting used to being in his house.
Yeah.
Right. This is a new place for him as well.
Yeah.
So tack on, there's a big dog in my way. You know, it's not like he's like, hey, that's my bedroom. Like, I need to go get in there, so you need to move out of my way. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you got to be aware of that a little bit as well. But no, I'm not seeing scared right now, which is good. So.
Yeah.
That makes sense, yeah, because before they met, I was telling him he's super submissive. Like, if he meets another dog, the first thing he does is roll over on his back.
Sure.
So that's why I figured they would be fine.
Yeah, and I mean, just observing this, like, I don't see any major issues, obviously. And they've been together for obviously just under a week.
Yeah.
You know, you've had a couple little, you know, quarrels, we'll call it, but nothing super, super major, which is good. And I would say it's normal as well that when two dogs kind of move in with each other and have their own routines and stuff, you're going to see some boundary setting is kind of what we refer to that as, right? And like I said, we just want to be a couple steps ahead of the dog and make sure that it doesn't escalate to a problematic point. So we'll start kind of burning through the list. Like I said, generally the 3 things dogs are going to compete over or fight over are food, toys, and affection. So let's start with food here. What's your feeding routines been with them since they've been together?
So food and toys, I think we're killing. Like the food, usually I feed her, she eats it right away. I put her on her bed, he eats. He takes a little bit longer, and we've been feeding him over here in the kitchen.
So you're kind of keeping them separate when you're feeding them?
Yeah.
Good.
And
Totally fine.
And they, other than that, they are sharing the same water bowl.
Yeah. Is this the water bowl right here?
The one on the left, yeah.
Okay, and this is the food bowl right here. This is where Sora generally feeds. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead. You finish.
I was gonna say, like, she was worried about the water bowl at first, but I don't think, Sora's never been food aggressive or water, but so that's been okay.
Sure.
Water's been okay. But.
Water is never generally a problem with dogs. Even dogs that have serious resource guarding issues over food, we rarely will see it bleed over into water. Sometimes, but very infrequently. So I wouldn't be super concerned about that. Now, that being said, this is a common thing I see that people that originally are going from like a 1-dog household that move to a 2-dog household make the mistake of. So that food bowl is still down right there.
Keep taking out.
Definitely.
Okay.
Additionally, here's another thing that I like to do. Separate where the food and the water is. So obviously it's convenient having this little twofer kind of situation here, but the problem is what can start to happen sometimes if you were to see guarding over the water bowl or over time start seeing guarding in this area, it's because she has an association with this being her food area. So even if they're drinking water, she might think he's coming over to take her food.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I would ditch the double thing, put the bowl away, and feed her somewhere away from where you keep the water, right?
Okay.
Or maybe you just start keeping the water in a different location, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or whatever, obviously you don't have a ton of space, but if you figure out some way to separate feeding area, water area, and the feeding area somewhere where it's not like this thing is set up all the time. It's like, okay, when I feed, bowl goes here or whatever, and then when you're done, bowl goes away, and then it's just gone. This is just a neutral space then at that point.
Yeah, that's what we're doing with his bowl, because there's no...
Perfect.
So we'll do it with him.
Do the same thing with hers. I'll keep this up actually right now. And if you want, like if you like having this thing and want it just for water, that's fine. Just like I said, then feed in a separate space.
Okay, yeah.
So that's one big adjustment to make as far as food is concerned. Past that, I just observing, a lot of times when we look at multi-dog households, it's always a two-sided thing, right? So, you mentioned like he had some treats in his pocket, right? And little man's here's go-to was, let me jump all over you to try to get those treats, right? So a lot of times when we see 6 months down the road, people say, hey, my dog's gotten in a big fight or there was a problem or something like that, it's generally a matter of one dog is disciplining the other dog for something we should be disciplining them for, right? And with a little dog, it's not a big deal, obviously, to us.
Yeah.
To us, but like, let's say she was doing the exact same thing he was doing, that would be a massive problem, right? But we look at it as different because the size of the dog is bigger.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So looking at that, like kind of lack of impulse control for food, that would be something I start working on right away, right? You don't have to get super crazy with anything. It's not like you need to do, $1 million of training or anything like that. But one thing you could do, is that a bark collar on him?
Yeah.
Is that what that is? Does it work? I noticed he was barking through it pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
A little bit, right?
If it wasn't on him, he would still be barking probably.
Gotcha. Now, does it actually stim or does it just do the tone?
It can stim
But you have it set to just do the tone?
and vibrate.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So one thing you could do, right, is you guys can consider one of two things. One, just get him his own actual e-collar, or two, this can be turned into a 2-dog unit where your red button turns into the second collar, right? And you could just buy a second collar, right? And what you could do is you could just use it to start setting some baseline boundaries for things, right? So something like the jumping, right? We could just correct it, stop it, be past it, right? If the barking is something, obviously you have the bark collar on because the barking, I'm assuming, bothers you at a certain point, we could actually start correcting for that, right? And instead of it kind of like half working, you could actually correct it and have it just stop, right? So I say that because that kind of goes hand in hand with, if she was getting a little guardy over the food, maybe it was because he was like kind of intense in that area, right? Maybe not, I don't know, but it could contribute to it.
I mean, he was like jumping on the bag. And like,
Oh, he was, you said?
Oh.
Oh, then that makes a lot of sense to me then, why that incident would have kind of happened then at that point, right? So, because again, if
she was sniffing, he's little, so he's like jumping on the thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, so just kind of it's a cumulative, right? We want her to give a little space from the bag, obviously, but we also want him practicing more impulse control for the food as well, right?
Yeah.
So that's something you can kind of start, looking at ways to get on. Even if you don't get an e-collar right away for it, even something like telling him no, giving him a little poke or something like that. You can get a pet corrector, which is like a can of compressed air to start setting some boundaries. You just want to make sure that we're not looking at that as something normal, that we should just like accept like he's just going to do that. And we want to start trying to deter it so she could at least see we're handling that. You don't have to worry about it, right? He's not stealing your bag of food or anything like that. right?
We've been trying to deter a little bit, like before, like, you know, she was a little bit more loose with giving them food.
Sure.
While she eats, like, and I was like, let's not do that anymore. And like, you know, we tell them no. We do push them away, like
Sure.
we're on the couch eating like crackers and stuff. I do get worried about it, so I just make Sora chill on the bed until we're done.
Sure.
I don't want
which
them
is
both.
which is management right now because we haven't got that behavior under control, which is good,
Yeah.
right? Like obviously, like if we can't control this yet, we have to control that more, right?
Yeah.
But if we look at like bigger picture here, right? 6 months from now, we don't want to have to put her in a bed every time food's present in order to, you know, control her because he's too impulsive over that kind of stuff, right? So I would start looking at that, and like I said, you know, it sounds like you are trying to deter it. Let's just get a little bit more clear and concise of a way to do that, so we can actually start disciplining for it, so it actually stops, right? So that makes a lot of sense, like I said, as far as the food and why you had that problem with that.
Yeah. I mean, he's smart. He's gotten a lot better. He used to bark
Sure.
when we were eating, and now he doesn't.
Yeah.
So that's like a step in the right direction.
Let's take it a couple steps further.
Yeah.
We'll get it the rest of the way there.
Yeah.
Okay, so food, that's kind of your situation with food. So changing just the structure of how you have the bowls out, and then getting on him a little bit more as far as the impulsiveness towards the food, right? Meaning the jumping and stuff for it. Now toys, what's your, obviously you don't have toys out, you used to have a bunch of toys out.
Yeah.
What's your routine been with toys?
My idea has been just no toys for 2 weeks. I think earlier she had a toy out, but she was out here with me.
Yep.
And he was in there. She was playing with it, but I just didn't want to introduce toys for a little bit.
Totally fine. And that's generally what I do when you're bringing a new dog into the house, is just put the toys away, right? Don't worry about it initially. Let them develop a relationship with each other initially. So do that. And I would maybe even say even a little longer than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, just let them build some success, right? When you integrate them back in, the biggest thing is we have to make sure we have control over the resources, right?
Yeah.
Usually what I do is I start in small chunks. So maybe once a night, we'll designate a toy time that's like an hour long where I can give you a toy, I can give you a toy, do your thing. And it's during a time where I'm able to supervise them and make sure I'm proactively not letting anybody steal anything from
I
anybody.
already know I'm going to have to correct him for that.
You think so?
Oh, for sure, because I like taking care of like my friend's puppy. I'll
Yep.
give them the same treat, for example. She will abandon her treat to go try to take the other treat, and I'm like, I correct her and
for it.
stop her, but like I've told her, I was like, she's gonna be a dick and try to take his toys.
Yeah.
'Cause-
You just got to make sure she realizes like when he's got toys, you're not allowed to mess with him, right?
And honestly, that reminded me of another incident. Like, he has this blanket that he loves, and we were just letting it chill, and he like chews on it and stuff.
Sure.
And one day he was chewing on it out here, and Sora went to go try to take it, and that turned into like a
Okay.
yeah.
So look at that blanket that he likes to chew on a little bit, that's a toy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you look at it from that lens, that's exactly it. He's engaging with a toy, you know, that's a high value resource to him. It's no different than if he had a bone or something. She's going over to mess with him when he has that. I'm sure he doesn't like it, right? So maybe he gave her the little stink eye or something or whatever,
Yeah.
and then it turned into a competition over it, right?
It turned into a little thing, and then he ran away, and
Yeah.
then I was like, all right, the blanket will go into his kennel. 'Cause he
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is fine. And listen, I don't want you to have to put everything away,
Yeah.
right? If you want to have the blanket out, I don't have a problem with having the blanket out. You just have to monitor, and you got to be ready. If she goes to mess with him while he's messing with that blanket, you got to correct her for that,
Okay.
right? But as you add them back in, it's just a mutual respect of, and same deal with him, right? If she's got a toy and he doesn't, and he wants to go butt over and try to steal that toy, we got to be in a position to discipline him for that as well, right? And do it proactively, meaning don't wait. If she's got a toy there, don't wait until he's like all the way on top of her going to take that toy. Right when he starts going for it, or vice versa, like let's say, you know, right here, oh, you got a toy there? As soon as you see that intent, that's where you want to correct. And then the least looked at one by most owners is affection. That is probably one of the number one places we'll see dog fights happen, is when we're sharing affection in the form of a resource. Other dog tries to butt in, boom, guarding that resource no different than they would a toy, right? So I set rules in the house, right? If I'm gonna pet one dog, if I wanna pet him, hi buddy. Oh, you're very submissive. Look at you. You're just so cute though, look at you. Like let's say I was petting him, hanging out with him, and Sora were to come over, right, and try to butt in, I would correct her for that, right? And vice versa, right? If I'm petting Sora, come here. Hi. And if he were to try to butt in, right? No. Right? I'm going to make sure that I'm sharing that, hey, you don't have to worry about that right now. I've got this under control.
Okay.
Right? So that's kind of the idea behind it. Really where that gets more important is in the mindless places that you're used to sharing affection. So hanging out on the couch, right? In the bedroom, places like that, where it's like you're not even thinking about it. You're watching a movie and you're just like, just hanging out, petting my dog, right? And you're not paying attention. And then suddenly, other dog comes up into their space.
They're actually being more playful right now, but I feel it's because we're not on top of.
But keep in mind, right? I wouldn't look at this as play. Tell them no. Yeah, there you go. I wouldn't look at this so much as playful, right? Because he started getting feisty when the affection and stuff started happening there, right? So I would look at that a little bit more as like kind of like a little bit of a controlling behavior, right? It's not a problem by any means, but you could tell, I could tell just based on, like I said, trying to go for the treats and like when we came in and stuff, he could be a little demanding, you know? And you mentioned the demand barking you used to see and stuff over the food. So that's kind of what I view some of that as more than anything. So it's not a problem. Like I said, it's just something to be aware of, right? I wouldn't look at that, oh, they're happy, they're playing. It's just, you know, I'm just going to keep an eye on it. Those are usually, like those three things, those are my biggest tips for success when it comes to integrating households together. Is as long as you control the resources, you won't run into any problems. And when I say control the resources, like I said, I don't mean avoiding them. I mean making sure the dogs realize that I have control over them around the resources.
I just get a little apprehensive when she wants to play with him.
Sure.
Because she's like, the paw on the back.
Ah, okay.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, his back, like.
Yeah, sure. You could, the paw on the back thing, when we have dogs of like substantial size difference, there's certain rules you kind of have to set, right? Where like my one like littler dog, he'll kind of paw the others a little bit, but it's not that big of a deal because they're bigger than him, you know what I mean? But, you know, in her case, she's substantially bigger than him, and yeah, pawing on his back, both from just the fact that he's a dachshund and they have bad backs to begin with, right? And, obviously the fact that, you know, he's just smaller than her and we don't want her starting to see him as like this like play toy, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's something I probably would correct for.
Okay.
Yeah. Now don't separate them, right? That's the biggest thing is we don't want to isolate them from each other and be like, no, don't do that, go this way. No, don't do that, go this way. We just want to address the problem and just teach them where the boundary is for it, right? Because the boundary isn't you can't be together at all, right? The boundary is just don't do that thing, right? So, you know, monitor it, right? 90% of the time, like when my wife and I moved in together, right? She had a dog, I had a couple dogs, right? And we went through all this, right? Initially, it was a lot of like the first couple weeks, we almost treated it like the dogs were in like a mini board and train in the house where it was like, you know, yes, like we used to cuddle on the couch all the time, or you used to sleep in the bed all the time and stuff like that, or whatever it may be. But for the next couple weeks, I'm just here to play lifeguard, right? This is about you two building a relationship with each other. So when I'm hanging out on the couch, I'm not going to be petting you all the time, right? All those types of situations. So I can just observe. So that's a lot of it. And as long as you're observing, like even little things like when he walked over towards her, like I stopped for a minute, I'm like, let me just watch and see what happens, right? And if there's any sort of issue, I'll stop it, right? If not, I'm just going to keep a closer eye on it, you know? And you just have to be very aware of that kind of stuff and go into situations not expecting horrible things to happen, but being like I call it cautiously optimistic, right? So like I'm optimistic it'll be fine, but I'm cautious that, you know, we're probably going to experience a couple little places where I need to set a hard boundary, and I just want to be ready to do it and not caught off guard. Because if you go into it too like, man, the first 3 days were great, we're good, you know? What happens then is, you know, you loosen up a little bit, and then when something happens, you're like, whoa, like where did that come from, right? So I try to just avoid that mindset too much. Sora is not a monster from the standpoint of like she wants to kill other dogs. You know what I mean? You know, and in a lot of cases, like even the little like squabbles and stuff you had, they look a lot scarier than they actually are. You know, not that we want them to happen all the time, but I would probably try to loosen up a little bit on that. You know, but again, be aware and just set them up for success, right? And as long as you do that, you really shouldn't run into any big problems. You really shouldn't. Because every one of the situations you've described to me so far, I could look at and be like, oh, this is why that happened, right? The food situation, he was going crazy over the food. She was sniffing it at the same time. They're both competing for the same resource. We're going to compete over it. The blanket situation, right? He's engaging with a toy. She's going to try to steal it. They both don't like it. They start competing over it.
I think the one that we were like, what happened was when they were in the kitchen. I think Sora was in the kitchen and he came into the kitchen. I think she was cooking and I was in the shower and he, Sora did her little ran him off.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Hard to say without seeing that one.
Yeah.
But sometimes we'll see like in this area, let's say she's used to lounging in this corner and like she's a little uncomfortable that this guy's coming in. Like if you really look at this, like she's got no escape path. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like if she's uncomfortable, I got to get you out of my space. Okay. Right? Again, we don't want her doing it, but I can understand where it came from a little bit, especially if that was early in the early in things as well.
The question I have is like, what do we do if like, because there are moments where like he'll be more scared of her.
Sure.
And he's like trying to avoid her, and he'll be using us to avoid her.
Yeah, good question.
Putting us between.
I think there's there's a degree of advocation that has to be at play in multi-dog households, right? And what I mean by that is, let's say she's just pushing his buttons, right? And he's had enough, right? And he is doing everything he can to try to avoid her, right? And she's not picking up on that signal, right? And he's coming over to you. Now, I'm not gonna be like, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it or anything like that. I'm not gonna do anything with him. And if he jumps on me, I'm still gonna correct him for it. But if I could tell he's doing everything he can to get her to stop and she's just not picking up on those signals, I'll correct her for that, right? So we essentially, it's our job to back up the boundaries that our dogs set, right? Let's say he lets out a little snap or something like that, which is normal, right? Or she lets out a little snap or something like that. That's normal, right? If the other party doesn't stop, then at that point, we have to discipline the other dog for not stopping. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So in the case you described, she's poking his buttons, won't leave him alone. He's trying to get away. I would correct her for not picking up on that signal and like egging him on, just pushing him, right?
I haven't necessarily corrected her, but I'll be like, all right, you need to chill out. So go to your bed and chill out for a little bit.
It's too indirect. Solve the problem, don't manage the problem, right? Because all that says is you could do that until I tell you bed, right? Okay. Where if we correct it, it says you just can't do that.
I've been using the bed kind of as a like, all right, you're too like hyped right now. You need to chill out and
start
chill out and then.
Yeah, start just correcting for those things.
Okay.
And you'll notice she'll calm down quicker, right? Like she's totally chill right now. That's because she got corrected really high for jumping on her. I turned it was all the way up for that. I think I tapped it like 3 times. I said, no, tap, 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 right? And she was like, oh, holy shit, I'm not supposed to do that, right? And now she's laying there nice and calmly. So the same deal would apply if she's poking his buttons and she's too amped up and I need her to stop because she is doing something wrong in that moment, right? I would give her a big correction for that and I would expect this is what she does after it, right?
So can I like give her a correction as well as like if I'm on the bed with her and he's like wants to come in or he's about to come in. She doesn't do anything but like she like, shows her teeth, for example.
Okay. Yeah, just so I'm clear on this, right? So you're in the bed, Sora's on the bed with you, you're hanging out, he just walks in the room and she shows her teeth?
Yes.
Like he hasn't even gotten in her space or anything?
No, like he's like right at the doorway.
Firmly correct that. Get that under control right away. No. Like he's allowed to walk in here. You don't have to, it'd be a different story if you said he was jumping up and getting in her face and stuff and she did that. Yeah. But like, that's where I refer to as like warranted signs of like defensiveness versus unwarranted. That would be unwarranted, right? He didn't do anything to you. He walked in the room.
I was telling him, I don't want to tell her no if
Sure.
she's trying to play with him because she's not doing anything wrong, but she just needs to learn how to be less rough and then he'll probably want to play with her more.
Yeah, she needs to just tone it back a little bit,
so
right?
by correcting it, she'll learn, I can't do that.
Yes. And like I said, like it's got to be situational because I'll only correct it if she's actively doing, like I'm not just going to correct my dog for trying to play with another dog. Right. But if they're trying to play with the other dog and the dog is clearly saying, I don't like that, and they're still trying to do it, then I would correct for it, right? Because that's where it becomes wrong. Trying to play with the dog is not wrong. Right. Persisting trying to play with the dog when the dog doesn't want anything to do with you right now is what's wrong.
And I think that's where we disagree a little bit because I haven't felt like she's been doing that.
Sure.
Like the paw thing, I guess,
The paw thing I would consider, even if he was playing back, I would just say that would just be a boundary I set in general, right? And here's the other thing too, even if you don't see it that way necessarily, it's not wrong to be a little proactive about it initially, just to kind of help everybody feel a little bit more comfortable with it. Like, it's okay to set that boundary, even if it hasn't totally been like that, right?
In her mind, he's playing, but he's like, I don't like this.
Sure. And,
So it's like we correct it if he's not into it.
Correct. Yeah. And again, it's a little bit of a line. You know what I mean? Because you also don't want to find yourself in the trap where it's like you start turning into like helicopter parent over it, right? Where it's like, oh my God, he like walked away for 2 seconds. He doesn't like this anymore. We need to correct Sora for it. Like, you don't want to get too extreme with it, obviously, because I do want to some extent them to kind of figure out some boundaries amongst each other. So the only thing I would say is just make sure it's like pretty apparent that he's not into it. Not just like a little, I'm kind of bored of this for a second or whatever. I want to like see that he has actively tried to get away from her, not just for like 2 seconds, but like longer than that.
Yeah, I will be honest, I was like, you're being dramatic about the paw. But
it's not.
It doesn't look like she's like.
It's a give and take. It's a give and take. You know what I mean? Because it's like, again, with some dogs, it's not that I have a problem with a dog pawing another dog. It's just due to the size difference and us wanting to be a little extra proactive about things, I would say it's probably a line I would draw. Try to use your bed less and start just setting boundaries for things more. Here's another big thing too, especially if you're home all the time, give yourself breaks from it. Just put them away for a little bit, when you're trying to focus, because there's no reason why like you need to be like, this is all on, you're here all the time. You gotta make this work kind of thing. Like when you're at home trying to work and stuff, give yourself breaks and give them breaks away from each other sometimes, Yeah. And that could be in the form of either doing a bed stay, right? Or just putting him in his crate or putting her in the other room or something like that. Don't do it when they're misbehaving. But if they're like right now, let's say we're like, all right, this was good. Let's just end on a positive note right now, right? And give ourselves a break for the next 2 hours or something like that. You could do that. That's okay.
Well, honestly, I hadn't thought about the other stuff with him and how she might want to correct him for those things.
It's big. 99% of the time when people call me and say, my dogs are getting in fights, I need to send my one to a board and train, it's either the other dog is the problem or it's equally problematic amongst them, And I'm not saying your dog is bad by any means, right? But some of those little things, it's okay when it's just a solo dog, right? But when you have multiple dogs, those can become problems.
Other than that, Sora's been doing great.
Good.
This has been her biggest challenge in a while, so.
Good. Yeah, no, happy to see it. Like I said, it's been questing you out and about a couple times, and looks like she's killing it. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
What do you think, Sora? She said, I'm just chilling right now. So can you guys go? I'm trying to take a nap.
I'm glad you came for a couple of reasons. Well, I was looking back at this, man. I can't remember the last time we spoke. It's been like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I don't.
Beginning of summer.
But I
2 years
don't.
ago.
I don't see it that like when I started thinking about it, I was like,
yeah.
oh, it's probably been a couple months. And I was like, nope, it's been a year and a half.
Yeah.
I don't, I've lost, I don't know, things just get so busy and hectic with work, with life and family and shit. It's just, I lose that. And I do like so many of these. It's not that everyone bleeds together, but they just don't seem like they were all that long ago.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember what me, you, and Brian talked about. But that was not a knock on you. I don't remember what most things I talk about with people on here. It's just kind of like a joking conversation. But
Yeah.
But David Turpek, thanks for coming back, man.
Happy to be here.
You're
Thanks for
becoming
having me.
a trend of I'm starting really into having like repeat people on. It's so much fun. Like, cause it's just the second time around. It's not that the first time was hectic, but the second time is just so much more chill.
The follow-up is really cool. Like, we've only had a handful of like repeat guests at this point, but like every time we have, it's like we got all the bullshit of, oh, hey, why don't you like tell me about yourself first, and let's go through the story of you, and like all the kind of the rah-rah stuff. You kind of get all that out of the way, and you can kind of just touch more specifically on topics.
So, for anyone that doesn't know, so you are the founder of Miracle Canine Training.
Yep.
And how long have you had this?
So Miracle Canine, I started in January of 2019. So what is that, like 4.5 years, something like that. And I owned a different dog training company before that for about 4 years. And then worked for a guy for before. So I've been training for coming up on about 11 years or so. And had Miracle Canine, which is solely my company, for about 4.5 years at this point.
God, But 11 years of training.
11 years.
So there are certifications that you have to do to things like this?
Nope.
Nope.
So this is kind of where you get into a lot of, you want to talk obviously some of like the drama of the dog world and stuff. So
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I have, when I lived in Akron, I came across a couple.
Yeah.
You know, we'd go to like those little like what the Cleveland Flea was down in Akron. They would have those, and I had a fuck face of a dog at the time.
Yeah.
And I saw somebody, and I actually kind of knew the guy too. We went to college together, and he had that. I was like, oh, thank God.
Sure.
I'm like, this dog sucks. And I told some people about it because I'm like, here's my number. I never heard from him. And then I found out they're like, it's not obviously that happens in a lot of industries, but they're like, there are a lot of people that like to start these and they're just not very good at them. They're not good at, you have to be good at so many aspects. We talked about 3 casually before you even get to the actual being able to train.
Yes. Yeah, so it's a totally unregulated industry, meaning obviously anybody can get into it, right? Like if you suddenly decided I'm an expert dog trainer and wanted to start a business tomorrow, like there's nothing stopping you from it. Like you legally could take money from clients and help them, et cetera, right? So very, very like low cost of entry to get into it, right? Which is good and bad, right? It's good because you're able to get into it easily. Like myself, no college degree, right? Just kind of being somewhat good at what I was doing and stuff, was able to get into this industry and kind of figure it out and move through it and stuff like that. But there's also people that probably have no business getting into the industry as well, you know? And frankly, some of them can make massive names for themselves. So getting back to like some of these people who have unbelievably massive followings online, you know, you could really look at them and kind of debate like how qualified are you to be giving some of the information that you're giving to the mass of people that you're giving it to, you know? So it stirs up so much commotion in the industry, and anybody who's on social media and follows and has like favorite dog trainers, whether it's, you know, you're just local and follow me or follow some of the bigger guys in the industry, like, you know, Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer that's been around forever, or guys like that. You know, all you have to do is just take one look in the comment section and see the debates back and forth of ideological differences, and you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong, I hate you for this, you're a freaking animal abuser because you left your dog in a crate for 2 hours while you're at work, or any number of things. It gets pretty crazy sometimes. There's obviously like these important topics and understandings you need to know, right? The psychology side of things. And there is like a science side of things, of understanding, you know, quadrants of learning and how do animals think and all this kind of stuff. But from there, people don't factor in the additional variables that go into training a dog, which is just not just like how does an animal learn, but like what is the lifestyle that the owner lives with that dog, right? Are they owned by elderly people or a young active couple? Are there kids in the house? Are there other dogs in the house? Do they live in an apartment, a big city, rural? You know what I mean? Like there's so many variables that force you to kind of take a look at all of these different methods at your spectrum, and whether there's one method that is like scientifically proven to be the quickest way for an animal to learn, or the way with like least resistance for an animal to learn, or anything like that. That method might not fit with all of those other variables that are at play, which is where a lot of the debate in the dog world comes from, is you know, how do we determine what the proper way to work with an animal is going to be, and you know, where do we draw the line of, you know, if we are going to start adding regulation into this industry, of where those lines are of what we want to allow and what we don't want to allow.
Is that something that's coming, like more regulation?
Yeah. So we talked about it quite a bit on our podcast over the last couple of weeks, because just maybe 3-4 months ago, they passed a bill in the UK to start banning certain training tools, right? So you have different training collars and things like that, obviously. And they passed a bill to outlaw them, right? Basically make it illegal to use any of those types of things. And, you know, some people would look at something like, say, a pinch collar, an electric collar, and be like, oh, I would never use that for my dog, or whatever, which again is a whole debate that we could have. But they're tools that people, you know, use very regularly, right? And have helped quite a few people, right? From a more extreme end that I show everybody, though, is if you look at countries like Sweden, for example, Sweden actually banned the ability to confine your dog in a kennel, right? So many people, when they go to work, they put their dog in a crate, or else if they don't put their dog in a crate, they're going to come back and their entire house is going to be destroyed and shredded to pieces.
Yes.
Right? And that is illegal to do in Sweden, right? So if you have a dog like that, you're kind of at the mercy of, okay, well, either I keep the dog in a crate, and I potentially run the risk of, if somebody finds out that I'm doing this, potentially up to like tens of thousands of dollars in fines. You'd have your animal actually taken from you, or in extreme cases, you could actually serve jail time over some of that kind of stuff. So, so because that's continuously moving, it started in Europe, right? In a lot of different countries in Europe, it's moving to the UK right now. And there's a big push back against it in the UK right now. We had a couple of guests on recently that are big players in fighting against those bans out there. And have actually put a stop to or a pause on the bill currently to have it reevaluated, so it doesn't actually take effect yet. But yeah, it's only a matter of time before that starts moving its way over here. We're just, I would say, in the United States, probably a little bit more like liberal of a country as far as like what we allow, you know. So I think it's going to take a little longer before it really starts impacting the dog world out here.
I don't know. So, in somebody, me, bird's eye view, doesn't really know anything,
Sure.
and you know. Is a possible side effect of cracking down on, however you want to refer to these methods or tools. Mm-hmm. I mean, wouldn't a side effect of that be then less people get dogs? Because nobody wants a dog that's going to tear up their home. No.
So I don't necessarily think it's going to be less people getting dogs, but I think it's going to be a result of more people needing to get rid of their dogs they already have.
Okay. So
shelters getting further overrun more so than they actually are, right? If you look at, we work with a lot of local shelters, right? And with most of them, if you were to ask them, like, what's the number one reason dogs are like returned to your shelter? It's going to be things like destroying stuff in the house, jumping all over guests, getting into things they're not supposed to, running away, right? Aggressive behaviors, obviously, things like that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which all these different training methods we have at our disposal, whether anybody agrees with them or not, they're methods that people use to curb that kind of stuff. So ultimately, the dog can stay in the home and in a lot of cases alive, because when the shelters get overrun, those dogs start getting put down.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So I guess it's almost actually an even, because that's kind of where I was going. Like if no one gets a dog, doesn't get a dog at a pound, doesn't get a dog at a kennel, doesn't get a dog at a one-of-a-kind pets or whatever the hell you got close to you, then they're going to get over. So in a way, it's kind of the same impact. I think I just took the much longer route.
Sure, yeah.
But it's almost the same impact, is that you're having dogs that need homes that can't find homes.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people like getting dogs from shelters. I think that's where we got our first dog. Well, actually, from the pound in Akron. I don't recommend that. I don't know. I just think the Akron pound is very similar to a jail.
Sure.
Like a person jail. Like
Yeah,
those are hardened dogs. Like, we got that dog home, and he was like JB Smooth on like Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Like, I loved him so much, but every time I'm like, fuck, why do we still have him?
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, but that's then, I guess, kind of goes into. But I'm also not somebody that would get rid of the dog. I just couldn't do that. But there are plenty of people that do that every single day.
I think it's important to realize a couple things. One, everybody has their tipping point with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, all right, well, you have a kid now, right? So if that dog's coming into the house and, potentially showing dangerous behaviors towards your child or something like that, I'm sure your threshold to those types of things would be much lower than it was in the past. You know what I mean?
Very small. I don't like it when they wrestle near him.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, exactly, right? And then, you look at a lot of the shelters to begin with, right? And you look at, those dogs, they're picking up off the streets or their owner surrenders, right? Yeah. And in those cases, we look at our human emotion, and a lot of what the shelters is kind of like preached to us is like, these dogs have these like traumatizing pasts, which has caused them to be like the hardened criminals at, Akron Pound or whatever it was, right? Where in a lot of cases, it's not that they had bad things happen to them. It's just that those are the dogs that were probably gotten rid of by their owners or returned because they were bad in the first place, not because they abused them and neglected them, and then the pound went and saved that dog from that owner. Like, that happens. Like, there's obviously terrible abuse out there, right, in the dog world. But under most circumstances, the dogs in the shelters that are really poorly behaved are there because owners couldn't handle them. Getting back to like training and different methods and stuff like that, it's like it doesn't have to be so bad. And like, there are ways to like stop and curb that stuff very, very quickly. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to take 3 years of you trying to be consistent and like teaching your dog this stuff. Like, you can get that stuff under control pretty rapidly. And once you do, it's like the life you're able to live with your dog and the relationship you're able to have with them is just so much better. Like, so many people come to us. I had a client just the other day I was working with, did a board and train with us. I was on follow-up session number 2, which, after a board and train, we do a couple sessions with people to make sure they understand how to use the training. And this dog was like ruining their life. Like they couldn't confine it when they left the house because he was like hurting himself in the crate. He was destroying everything in their home. He was acting aggressively towards their guests. Like it was just a disaster, right? And they came back, and it's 2 sisters that live together and own this dog. And the one asked me, she's like he's doing so well right now, but like, how do I, what should I do with this like resentment towards him that I'm starting to feel right now? Because now I'm seeing how amazing my life can be with this dog because I have control over him, right? And I didn't have any control over him. And he was for years, like she's had this dog for 6 years, right? And for 6 years, this dog was controlling her entire life. She couldn't have a boyfriend and bring a boyfriend over the house because of the dog's behavior, right? She couldn't leave the home unless her other sister was home because he would hurt himself in the kennel. She left him in there. And she's realizing, like, I lost all these years of my life because of my dog's bad behavior. You know what I mean? Like, people don't realize how toxic the relationship can get with your dog due to how out of control some of them can be. It's crazy.
That's rough, man.
Yeah.
But again, I see why
Yeah.
why people need services like that, and I've seen it work. It's pretty cool. And the videos you post are very, very cool. And that's an interesting one too, because it's kind of like a juggling act. You obviously don't want to. I don't think that it's possible for you to, put a 15 or 60-second clip on Instagram and someone's like, oh, why would I pay for this? I'll just do that.
Sure.
That's not possible.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that my buddy mentioned to me that after he got his dog back from you, he's just like, that's not the end of it. Like, it's continued education, for lack of a better term, that you have to keep kind of reinforcing in the dog, especially when they're younger.
Honestly, I try to give out the secrets. You know what I mean? Like, there's no, like, I don't hold anything back. Like, frankly, like, if you wanted to, you probably could dig through all of our YouTube content, all of our shorts we post, stuff like that, and you could get all the information you're going to need on how to train your dog, right? The problem is, with anything, like I said, like, dog training is kind of an art, right? You need to apply it to each individual situation and this and that. So if I can give away enough secrets where somebody in freaking, Arizona is able to learn how to train their dog and get to a place where they're living a better life just by watching our videos, which happens. Like, we get messages from people that live in different states and stuff that have been able to greatly help their lives with their dogs through our content, then hell yeah, like I'm all for that, right? I wouldn't be able to help that person anyways because they're, 7 states away, right? But, if I'm not able to, maybe they'll get a couple pointers from those videos that will help them understand what we do, understand how we do it, maybe get a couple tips on how to manage things a little better, and maybe give it a go on their own. And then when it ultimately doesn't work or they plateau off with how far they're going to get, I'm going to be the first person they call to then fix the job. You know what I mean? I've built that trust with them. So I encourage people to put everything out there, right? Because you're not going to... People want guidance. You know what I mean? It's like fitness, right? Like, you could go online and Google how to come up with a meal plan, right? Or how to come up with like a workout program or something like that. But the accountability side of things, of having somebody kind of walk you through those steps, some people just want that. And that's really what you're paying for. And in a lot of cases, like, dog training, behavioral modification, stuff like that, it's an emotional process for people too. And we joke that like half of our job is like human therapists too. We're helping owners to like overcome the emotional hurdles. Like this girl, like, how does she help with like feeling the resentment of like the life she could have had in the past with her dog, right? Or all those types of things. We help people navigate all that kind of stuff as well. So the secrets are really the last of our concerns with stuff. We want to put things out there to help people, and that's the point of the content that you want to put out anyways, to provide some sort of value for somebody.
I mentioned the videos, and I was kind of joking around a little bit, but you have to encounter this I know you do because I've seen it, is the comment section in your videos, which honestly, it's my favorite show on the internet. It's so funny. Yeah. Because you'll post, in your videos, I do encourage everyone to go to his Instagram and check out the videos on the Miracle Canine, because it's walking through, you have a dog that does this. It's kind of like a short, like a quick hit tip or something like this for like an aggressive dog, or for a dog that jumps on you, or for a dog that doesn't listen and things like that. And, there's always a lot of comments, and a lot of them are always really positive. Like, man, that's actually pretty cool. I didn't know that, or that's good, or I know a friend, or my dog's like that. And then there's a couple that are just like, actually, that doesn't work and you shouldn't do that. Well, you should do it. And I don't know why. I click on that profile every time.
Every time.
Person
I do the same thing.
Never has a dog background. This is Todd from Advanced Auto Parts.
Yeah.
He doesn't know anything about dogs. He doesn't have a dog in his house, but he loves to go to your page and he loves to give everyone conflicting information as to why this successful business in training dogs is actually not the way to go.
Yeah.
And you should listen to him.
It's funny, for a while I thought, like, we've been making content probably since, I think I started really understanding the importance of making content sometime like 2017 maybe is where we really started making quite a bit, right? And we've really, over the last like 3 or 4 years, what did we figure out the other day was your 3-year anniversary with us? Yeah. So like 3 years ago when Paige came on is when we really like hit the gas pedal on like making content. But I used to think when I first started doing it that the hate that you get and like the bullshit you deal with in the comment section was like solely this industry. And there's a lot of it in this industry, don't get me wrong. And it could be very intense in this industry because you're dealing with these living, breathing animals people care so deeply about, as opposed to like, wow, your fucking Rheingeist truth sucks dick, right? Like you need to make a better beer or this or that. Yeah. No, I actually love Rheingeist. But anyways.
I do too.
But, it's different because like there's so much more of an emotional charge behind it, right? Because we care so deeply about these animals, right? But it is every industry. Like I now have friends that own all sorts of different businesses, right? Yeah. And it doesn't matter what the business is. When you start putting yourself out there, there's going to be people that want to shit on it, and who knows why, right? Whether it's a self-esteem issue, whether it's they want to feel a part of the conversation, whether they actually think that they know better in those situations. It's just kind of one of those things that I feel like comes with the territory of creating a name for yourself. Well, listen, I think it's one of those things too, where like if you really look at like human nature, like you were saying, right? Like we're constantly judging everything. You know what I mean? Like as I'm scrolling through Instagram, the amount of thoughts that cross my head sometimes of, oh, I like this, or oh, I don't like this, or I have this opinion about this. Are extraordinary. You probably develop opinions of everything that you see all the time, The difference is you learn to kind of censor yourself sometimes, right? And understand where your opinion is needed and where it's not needed. And it's a hard gamble, right? Because it's like you don't want to censor yourself too much, right? But I think the big thing I tell everybody is if you want to have a strong opinion on something, like create a page on it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like make your own stuff and create opinions on that kind of stuff. I think it gets tough when you get into like intentionally going on somebody else's page to post negativity. I can't really wrap my head around that. Like I might think, negatively about certain things that I see, but there's a person on the other side of it. You know what I mean? Like I've seen the ramifications of like, people that have really, really, really large followings that'll take those followings and like intentionally or not, like almost like weaponize them towards something they disagree with,
Yeah.
You get into like the whole like cyberbullying is a problem just in schools and stuff. Like it's on a mass scale in the business world, right? People will send tens of thousands of people to go write negative feedback on your stuff or write reviews on your stuff, and, you could tune it out all day long, but at some point, like if you get all day long your phone fucking buzzing with people telling you what you're doing is stupid or bad or this or that, it's going to affect you at some point,
So something else has happened to you recently is that you ended up on the Cleveland Forbes 30 under 30.
Oh yeah, See, this is the thing is last time I was on this podcast too, I think this happened where I couldn't remember where exactly we started recording.
Yeah, it's impossible.
We started talking.
I'm very bad at that.
Okay, no, it's fine. Yeah. So I got the Cleveland 30 under 30 Forbes. It's like a local thing they did. I think that what they did is they picked 12 cities around the United States to do this like local 30 under 30 thing. So 30 people in each city that are under 30 that are doing cool things in the
That's
world
awesome.
of business.
That was a cool list of people, man.
Yeah.
I love when things like that come up because a lot of times there were people on the list that I know, but half of them I didn't know.
Sure.
I like seeing things like that of people that are doing like startups and nonprofits. It's there's a lot of cool people in the city that I still don't know about yet.
Yeah.
And when things like that come out, I think it's really, really cool. And that's awesome, man. Way to go.
appreciate
I don't know
that.
if you're into stuff like that. I don't know how you couldn't be.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely cool, you know. I didn't even know they were doing it. My wife found out about it, I think, and I think it was like a nomination thing, like you could
Okay.
put somebody's name in. So I think she nominated me for it, and then she had like a lot of the employees at the staff nominate me for it. And then I got reached out to, whatever, a couple months ago, some guy from Forbes. He's like, "Hey, I got this 9 million like question long questionnaire I got to send you, you know, for the process." And then, you know, that was to get me in the list for them to decide between. And then he called me like the week before and was just like, "Hey, good news and bad news." He's like, "Good news is you made it to the finals," right? He's like, "Bad news is you're not going to find out if you made it until the list comes out." And I was like,
really?
"Oh, cool."
Wow.
Yeah. So he told me when it was coming out, and I woke up that morning, I saw the article come out, and yeah, I mean, it's really awesome. You know, it's I think no matter how much we all try to act like we don't have like an ego for things, right?
Oh,
Like
come on,
obviously
of course.
something like that kind of feeds the ego a little bit, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, who wouldn't be excited about that? That's,
Yeah.
Anybody, obviously it can help your business
Sure.
for sure, but also it's just cool to be recognized for something that you're doing, that you built
Exactly.
yourself, that you
Yeah.
kind of, built over, I mean, really over the course of a little over 8 years now. You know, and then 4+ years
Yeah.
for Miracle. I mean, that's a cool thing that and you're starting to get not necessarily the recognition, but I think people are starting to see that the business is successful. I mean, you think
Yes.
about how many businesses start
Yes.
and don't make it or don't make money. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a difficult thing to
They
do.
talk,
It's-
what is it, the 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, like, you know, 10% of businesses fail at 1 year, et cetera, you know, through the
it's
first
just-
couple of years.
And
then you-
some can't turn a profit for 3.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know all the stats, but it's wild. It's very
Yes.
difficult.
Yeah, and it is sometimes a little wild when I like look back on like now again 8.5 years of working for myself. Granted, again 4 of those I had a partner in it, but still like it was our company. You know what I mean? That's it is pretty cool. You know, it's like, you know, because like in business, like you're gonna go through big ups and you're gonna go through big downs. You know what I mean? Like high highs and low lows with things. And over the course of 8.5 years, we've been through plenty of big ups and big downs with things where you kind of, you know, either feel like you're on top of the world or are really like second guessing what you're doing with stuff. And when you could like detach and take a step back sometimes and like look at it and be like, well, I might not be doing everything right. And, you know, there might be a lot of shit that I've fucked up before or think I could have done better or I'm hard on myself on or any of that kind of stuff. But like 8.5 years of successfully running a business with people that are, you know, dependent on this company for their livelihood is pretty freaking cool.